So many early birds. I think you're muted, Joan.
Okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes,
You can hear me.
I can hear you. Can other people hear you? Hear her?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. You're here. That's important.
Yes, especially since I've got all kinds of things I want us to do tonight. So I've got it timed so that we can do them all, I hope.
Did everybody get the handout okay?
I got it.
Okay. Good. I thought I would send it again just in case.
I just want to ask one question. Is anyone here unhappy that all of the political ads are behind us? Or are we glad that we can watch commercials, the old ordinary commercials again?
We only watch television that we've taped, so I never saw any of them. So
Oh.
that was good.
You're fortunate.
Yes, I heard horror stories.
I thought I enabled sharing in Zoom, but I am not seeing it's possible. So hang on, Susan. I think I have your email. Oh, well, I just sent it to you again. So hopefully you have it now, Sue. We'll give folks a few more minutes.
My clock says we have a few more minutes.
Okay.
Is my clock slow?
Do you need to share anything as we go on? Jo?
Well, I noticed we didn't put my email on there, and they are going to need that later. So I can do that right now. J Johannes. So it's JOHANNES 7 at gmail.com. JJOH.
Are you going to be sending this?
Well, I
Yes.
thought it was on the sheet, but it isn't.
Oh, all right.
I suppose, I mean, Tori would be able to do that.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, but I will also include it
Okay.
in the follow-up emails.
So I am ready when you're ready, unless we're getting people's emergency, I can't get in calls.
I'm trying to monitor my email. It's hard. Actually, I'm gonna do it on my phone.
I was just relieved that it was so easy this time.
Okay. Would you like me to introduce you, or do you just want to launch into it?
I just want to launch into it. Are we ready to launch?
Sure. Take it
All
away.
right.
Take it away, Joan.
We are launched. I'm Joan Wheezy Johannes. In the attic of life, I'm the Christmas decorations, packed in their box, full of memories, and looking forward to what comes next. Now it's your turn. Write down your name and what you are in the attic of life. Don't think too hard. Don't judge your answer. Just write it down. And I'll do mine again for you in case you want to think about the format a little bit. I'm Joan Weezy Johannes. In the attic of life, I am the Christmas decorations packed in their box, full of memories and looking forward to what comes next.
Mhm. Mhm. Hmm.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can, okay. Let's hear some of these responses, although I'm not sure how this is going to work in Zoom. It's easy when I do this in a room with people that anytime I give you a chance to share, you're always welcome to pass. And we just go around the room and you say pass, or you say your name and who you are in the attic of life. But with Zoom, it won't be that easy. Let's just assume that if two people unmute at the same time, the one that backs off will be the next one to speak so they don't have to keep trying to jump in. So who wants to tell us their name and who they are in the attic of life? Someone unmute.
I can go. Rita can, I can go.
Let's just go as many as would like to go.
My name is Rita Cairns. In the attic of life, I am a woman who has lived in many places and now enjoys staying put.
I'm Jim Nitz. In the attic of life, I'm the magical hiding place where your creativity goes to be alone.
Nice.
I am Christy Schwann, and in the attic of life, I'm the ruby glass platter inherited from your grandmother, ready for any sweet delicacies you want to serve.
I'm hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm Pepe Houlihan. And in the attic of life, I'm the well-worn toy waiting to play some more.
Hello, my name is Brian Gicchetto, and I am the marbles that my mother couldn't find to throw away.
I'm Jocelyn Moore. In the attic of life, I am the artifacts, the objects of lives lived, I tell everyone's stories.
I'm Susan Twiggs. In the attic of life, I am curious as a caterpillar, unfolding from the grub as a writer to a published butterfly.
I am Barbara Collignon. I'm a faded snapshot in the attic of life, waiting to be picked up and wondered about.
I'm Macy Washoe. In the attic of life, I am a dusty suitcase of old clothes. Pull one out for a day, a surprise. You won't know what you get.
I am Sandy Perry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I am Sandy Perry. In the attic of life, I am the theater props which have filled all the stages of my life.
Is anyone?
I can go.
Okay.
My name is Charles Trimberger, and in the Attic of Life, I'm a Christmas ornament reflecting the life of birds.
I'm Kim Parsons. In the Attic of Life, I am the well-loved toys, full of happy memories and joys for all your tomorrows.
I can go. I'm Heidi Hallett. In the Attic of Life, I'm the spinning globe, happy in the window, but curious about how the world lands.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I can go. I'm
Hi.
Sharon Daly. In the Attic of Life, I am the old journal revisited, woven words creating distinguishable patterns.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Nupur. I'm the spice of life, adding the sizzle and extra taste to, any dish to perk it up.
Has everyone who wanted to go gotten a chance to go?
I jumped in kind of late, so
That's all
I guess
right.
I can go. My name's
Okay.
Kate. My name's Kate Fremsman. So in the Attic of Life, I guess I'm the old vintage paper doll who's dusty and trying to brush off cobwebs. I've worn a lot of different outfits, and and I'm trying to make them fit.
These are wonderful. All of you did a super job with this assignment. I shouldn't call it an assignment, with this exercise. And we'll move on, and you might want to come back to it later. Notice I didn't start by spending a long time introducing myself or telling you about writing poetically. I had you write poetically, and you all did. What you did, and you probably know this, is you created an extended metaphor. Who you are in the attic of life. Now, if you're having fun with this, you could keep it that way. Stay in the attic of life and look around for other things in that attic, or develop what you've already come up with. You had some super images. For instance, you could switch it to the zoo of life, or the garden, the garage sale. What are you in the garage sale of life? A forest, a city, an ocean, the department store of life. Where do you fit in all of those different places? What I'm hoping I can get you to do in the next hour and a half is to discover meaningfulness after you write it, not before. We have a tendency to sit down and say, gee, I'd really like to write about a certain topic. But let's challenge ourselves to discover those topics as we go along. We don't have enough time in 2 sessions to go deeply into what poetry is. And there are books on the subject, and I listed 3 on your sheet. So if you are interested in what I'm telling you from these books, you don't have to get writer's cramp writing it down. It's right there on the sheet from Tori. But my favorite definition of poetry comes from The Art of Writing, Teachings of the Chinese Masters. This is a quote. The difference between prose and poetry is that though the form and diction differ, the writer's message remains the same. The message is like rice. When you write in prose, you cook the rice. When you write poetry, you turn the rice into rice wine. Cooking rice doesn't change its shape, but making it into rice wine changes both its quality and its shape. Cooked rice makes one full so one can live out one's lifespan. Wine, on the other hand, makes one drunk, makes the sad happy and the happy sad. Its effect is sublimely beyond explanation. Now that's the end of the quote, but the irony here is that when you read a poem that is so beautifully written that you literally get tears in your eyes, you actually feel good because you realize just how deeply you can feel, and you're in awe of the fact that a poet can make you feel that way. One of my teachers, the accomplished poet Carolyn Forshey, taught me that if you know what you want to write, write prose. When you're exploring your feelings and seeking to understand your responses to the world, write poetry. There's nothing wrong with putting what you have in your mind into creative nonfiction. It's not as if poetry is a high form and prose is a low form. I can't tell you the number of times when I've described an experience which would make very interesting prose, and someone says, you could write a poem about that. Billy Collins even has a wonderful poem about that very subject. It's called The Suggestion Box. And even the ducks in the park swim over and tell him, you could write a poem about us. But you don't write poems about things. Poems show the connection between things and life. If you already know what that connection is, well, you won't have anything to tell us. Stanley Kunitz says, a poem has secrets that the poet knows nothing of. If there's no surprise for the writer, there's no surprise for the reader. So surprise us. Sound and Sense is a book that I highly recommend. That's on your list. Its title alludes to a poem by Alexander Pope that includes the line, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. Just because modern poetry uses free verse more than rhythm and rhyme, the sound of lines is still important. When you're generating material today, when we do these exercises, after you have the draft on the page, look at the rhythms of the words. Don't be afraid to read in a sing-songy voice. Now, this is a writing technique. If you were reading the poem in public, you wouldn't read it in a sing-songy voice unless you're 5 years old. But it's a way of hearing your rhythms. For example, the first time I did In the Attic of Life, I had my Christmas decorations anticipating what comes next. Anticipating is full of the least pleasant sounds in the English language. The number one unpleasant sound is the S. It's a hiss. Anticipating. And that T, the plosives, they explode. Now, this is useful if you're writing a poem about the 4th of July, or there's a lot of action in your poem, but I have a quiet attic. So I changed that word to looking forward to, looking forward to, looking forward to, da-da-dee-da-da, sing-songy, and it's much easier on the ear. I also, when I'm trying to finish a line, want it to resolve. This is like music. Anticipating, looking forward to actually changes where the accent is. Looking forward to what comes next. So think about the sound and the meaning of the words. I wish I could juggle. I tried to learn once, but I just have too many irons in the fire and I'm doing too many things, but I can pantomime juggling for you so you can get the idea. You've got the meaning of your poem here, and that ball goes up in the air. I'm doing real well. I haven't missed it yet. And on the other side, you have the sound. But then you have what that first quote I read you said, the effect is sublimely beyond explanation. That beyond explanation, that's the third ball there. You've got the meaning, you've got the sound, and then the thing I can't teach you. That's sublime. Every once in a while when you're writing, that third ball is there in the air. And if you look at your drafts and you see a line, sometimes you'll even say, I don't even remember writing that. Because you've let it just come from your subconscious. And hopefully in the next couple of exercises, that may happen for you. It doesn't happen often, but we cherish it when it does. So I'm going to ask you to try some exercises that might help you discover topics that you never thought you were going to write about. Try not to think too hard. If you think too hard when you're doing an exercise, you filter your ideas. You lose the rhythm of the language and you lose some lines that could be really good lines. I know for me to write something like, "The sky is blue," is really hard because my brain is going, that is so trite. It's so stupid. Everyone knows the sky is blue, but the very act of writing it, and I use a roller ball and I do cursive. I love the motion. The act of writing it may take me to a line that could be a line that I really want to keep. So don't filter. You're only going to share with this group anything you want to share. So you put it down on the paper and work with it later. The exercise on your sheet that I said don't do before class, but some of you did, I'm sure. It's based on a poem that has stayed with me since the first time I read it. And that's a good sign. If you think about a poem often, there must be something there. My husband and I both are poets, and we have a folder of well-loved poems so that we can pull these out and revisit them. Another anthology that I highly recommend, The Voice That Is Great Within Us, on your sheet. That's where I got this poem. My first thought was that I'd talk you through it line by line, but then I realized that I would really be messing with your ability to concentrate if I was ahead of some of you and behind others of you. But by not talking you through it, I realize some of you may look at this page and go, "What is that?" Well, if you are confused, when we get to the end of it, I can solve your confusion for you. The one thing I will tell you, if you look there, the, after you finish, that's for a noun. You're going to name this the something after you fill in the blanks. So is anyone totally confused, or can we just go to filling in our blanks? You're not confused? Very good. Work fast. Don't judge what you're writing. Just fill in the blanks. Here we go.
One question I do have, Matt,
Yes.
is you speak of a sheet. Was that emailed to us? I must have missed it.
Yeah, Tori emailed it again just a few minutes ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Well,
I'll
that's all
find it.
right. Tori, you there?
Yeah, I'll find it.
Well, Tori may be able to send you another one.
I'm sure it's there. I didn't see it. So I'll find it.
You'll find it. Okay, here we go. Okay, hopefully you are finishing up if you're writing without thinking. Now take a breath and look at what you have. And think about that title. Okay, you got a title on it. Now think of a different title. And now take the title in a completely new direction that adds something that you hadn't seen the first time. Do the sing-songy thing with some of those lines to see if you can make them flow more smoothly. Now look at those he said, she said. Maybe said isn't the best word. Maybe there's more emotion in what your person is doing. Did they sneer, shout, laugh, whisper? Now I am going to share the original with you. I was going to put it on the sheet and have one of you read it. And then I thought, no, if I do that, everyone will mimic the original poem instead of creating their own. So first what we'll do is hear some of yours, those of you that are willing to share. Also, if yours don't sound like the other people's, you know, you listen to someone read theirs and you think, I did this wrong. That's impossible. You cannot do an exercise wrong. The whole purpose of an exercise is to generate ideas for you. And if your ideas are in a completely different form than anybody else's, that's wonderful. So who wants to share what they came up with for this exercise?
I can start. My name is Dwayne. I originally thought I'd call it the chickens, and then I followed your advice and found a better title after. There were chickens in the garden. Call out the chickens, I said. They'll not listen to me, she said. But I've a hog to move and she'll run if I leave. Then the chickens will stay, she said. But there'll be no peas in June if you don't. I say they won't listen to me, she said. And she hauled down her sheets and took herself inside.
And what did you call it the second time?
The June peas.
Oh, the June peas. Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
I'll go if nobody's. Nope. Somebody gonna jump in?
I can go. There were cranes in the sky. They're very loud, I said, but they're so wonderful, they said. But, well, that's the way they are. You don't seem to appreciate them, they said. But really, what does it matter? Well, you're so negative. I'll leave you to your opinion. It's no matter. And I called it the crane noise, and then the adoring birds, and then they are noisy.
I like the change to the negative on that last one. Anyone else?
Sure, I can go. This is called The Beauty and the Beast. There were red admirals in the linden tree. Mark the date, I said. I'm busy, do it yourself, he said. But you've got to enjoy beauty. They'll be gone in a flash, he said. This is a special time. What is so special about a cracked tree and insects? And he shook his head and walked away.
And what did you call it?
The Beauty and the Beast.
And what were your other titles?
I didn't have time.
I like that title. Yeah, I like that title. I think that puts a twist on it that I tried to get you to do with the third titles.
I've got one. Which universe? There were galaxies in the universe. They're endlessly expanding away from us, I whispered. Not possible, she cried. But scientists can measure this. I can't see it, she wailed. But it's really happening. Not in my world, she laughed. My galaxies are withdrawing into my mind.
She laughed, right? I liked what you did with the verbs. Anybody else?
I could go. There were birds in the woods. Listen to them sing, I said. We can hear them while we walk, he said. But it's beautiful. We need to get going, he said. But this is special here. I've heard them before, and we can't even see them. And I called it Brave Birds. And I didn't have time to think of another title.
And the line that stays with me is, we've heard them before. You know, the people who don't get it.
Okay.
I can go.
Okay.
There were buds in the trees. These buds will become leaves, so don't break off the branch, I explained. But I want to put some in a vase, she pleaded. But if you do, you won't see the tree in full bloom. I'll have a mini tree, a reminder in my home, she said. But the tree needs that branch. Not as much as I do, she said. And I'll care for it and be happy to have it. And just called it the budding tree, but I couldn't think of a second title.
Well, I'm thinking because it triggered a memory for me, and I'm hoping that's happening for the rest of you, that you might be jotting down notes of something that you might want to use. When I was a child, I started pulling off the branches of a budding lilac bush, and this old no, I'm an old lady, but this old lady came out and yelled at me because I was breaking those branches. And being a nice little kid, I went home and admitted to my mother that this lady had yelled at me, and she made me go over and apologize. And she said, I just didn't want the branches off before the blossoms. And the day they bloomed, she brought a beautiful bouquet of lilacs to us. And that memory came back to me because of what you wrote. And I'm hoping that's happening for others of you when people read theirs, that you're giving them something that they might want to use. Another one.
I can give it a shot.
Okay.
Oh, whatever. Okay, so there were birds.
So you'll be next.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to go? Go ahead. Okay, all right, I'll go. There were birds in the garage. If you see them, don't show it. But how do they survive? But who really cares? But who really cares if the shoe fits? It can't truly be like this, she said. But oh, it is if you keep it well. No, you can't, not here. It matters not to me, nor do I cry much. I called it the new flight.
The new flight?
Kind of bumpy there, sorry.
Except that the rhythms of the words were in the sentences worked really well. Now someone else was ready to go, right?
I'll go. The meadow scent. There were flowers in the meadows. Lay down and roll in the flowers, I said. I will dirty my dress, she said. But you will be filled with the scent of ox-eyed daisies. And I will stain my blouse, she said. But the odor of life is what you are searching for. I will have to throw my clothes away, she said. And she removed her outfit and ran through the meadow home.
The odor of life.
Ah,
I can go.
Okay.
The title I decided on was We Hear What We Hope. There were soloists in the ironwood trees. The trees are filled with birdsong, I declared. You mean the crass calling of the catbirds, he sneered. But birdsong is full of beauty. They wound my ears, he said. And that's as far as I got.
Okay. Okay. One more before we
I'll go.
move on.
I'll go. I'll go. I ended up calling it well, did you want titles first or?
Oh, well, now that you have a title, we can hear the
Okay.
title. Yeah.
Okay. Behind. There were doubts in the meadows. What can be done? I said. Nothing now, she said. But there is too much to leave behind. It is too late, she said.
Oop, we're losing you. If we can get you back, you want to start it over?
Oh, okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. I'm not quite sure where I was.
Oh, why don't you start it over?
Okay. There were doubts in the meadows. What can be done? I said. Nothing now, she said. But there is too much to leave behind. It is too late, she said. But the sun is still burning in the tall grass. It will be dark soon. And there is all that time and time.
And what was the title?
Behind.
Behind. All right. Does anyone know who wrote the original? It's The Act by William Carlos Williams. There were the roses in the rain. Don't cut them, I pleaded. They won't last, she said. But they're so beautiful where they are. Ugh, we were all beautiful once, she said, and cut them and gave them to me in my hand. We were all beautiful once, she said. That's the line that has stayed with me. Now, if you like what you wrote, you can keep it, but subtitle it after William Carlos Williams, The Act, so that no one accuses you of stealing it. You're acknowledging that this poem came from that poem. The other thing you could do is make it your own by turning it positive. Don't make it a negative poem. Look at your positive lines and just keep that part of it, or take the negatives so that it's not his pattern. It's a pattern that you create. Maybe you want to talk to someone else in the poem, or take yourself out of the poem and there's no first person. So then it becomes yours rather than an exercise from William Carlos Williams. I'm going to share what happened the first time I did this, just so I can show you what you can do when you're revising. Today, when I wrote it, I had been doing nature every time I did this exercise. So I had donuts in the cupboard and ended up with why is Easter more important than I am? Because they were supposed to be saved for Easter. But the first time I did it, I'll tell you what I wrote and then what the titles I picked were. There were geese in the park. Don't disturb them, I said. They're just big dumb birds, he said, but they mate for life. They crap all over the playground, he said, and loaded his gun and shot them. Well, my first title was The Pragmatist. And then I forced myself to come up with another title and called it Practicality, which is almost the same, but it's not as pretty a word. And then I thought the line I liked best was, but they mate for life. So I thought, oh, the marriage. And if I call it The Marriage, there were geese in the park. Don't disturb them. Well, that's kind of weak. Don't shoot them. Don't hurt them. Possible different words that I put in the margin. They're just big dumb birds, he said, but they mate for life. They crap all over the playground, he said. Well, I don't think I know anybody that talks about goose crap. You know what we say. But if I put goose shit in there, as soon as you swear, everyone who is half asleep wakes up. So unless that line is so important that you want them only to remember that, and I want them to remember they mate for life, I'm going to have to go with they mess up the playground. Everyone will know the only way that geese could mess up a playground. And this isn't about censorship. It's about impact on the reader if you're going to be reading the poem to somebody. But then I looked at that last line and loaded his gun and shot them. And I said earlier, I like to make a line resolve. Shot them doesn't do it. Loaded his gun and shot has a very ominous double meaning about being criticized. But then I looked at it and said, you know, this is really stereotypical. I have this female voice. Oh, the birds, be nice to the birds. And the male voice criticizing them. And we all know a lot of men who love nature. What happens if my he becomes the she? They're just big dumb birds, she said. And he's the one who says, but they mate for life. So I took the time to do this just so you could see what are the possibilities. Once you throw it on the page, what can you do with it afterwards? And at this point, I haven't finished it up and done anything else with it. But now you all have a second poetry draft. Remember, what we're doing is we're creating springboards for drafts and poems, not finished poems. The thinking comes in the revision process, which is what I just illustrated for you. Again, the faster you write, the better your natural rhythms will be. The other thing that happens when you write fast is sometimes things come out that are happy accidents. You write the wrong word, but when you think about it, it really works better than the word that you've chosen. Also, the stream of consciousness is a wonderful thing. Your brain is very circular. And when I was trying to explain this, I thought, okay, where can I start? And I had some crayons in front of me. And I thought, when I was a little kid, I used to sniff crayons. I don't know if any of the rest of you did. I loved the smell of crayons. And I would sniff my crayons. And as I got older and was a teenager, the perfume that I liked best was emerald, because emerald smelled like Play-Doh. And it took me back to being a child again. And now that my brain has taken me back to childhood, I'm back in my grade school class. Remember the desks that cranked up and made a funny sound as they cranked so that you could get kind of a slope on them. So if you were opening your desk to get out something you weren't supposed to, like candy, it would be making that noise the whole time you did it. And you'd open your desk and suddenly there are my crayons again. If I had been writing this as a free write, without consciously saying, I'm going to make sure I get back to crayons. I got back to that classroom desk and the crayons came. So free write, write and just trust that something's going to come out of it. Now on the bottom of your sheet, there are 15 words. You don't need to use those 15 words, but I wrote them out for you so that you can see how I set up a 15-word list. I either do it with 5 across and 3 down, or 3 across and 5 down. But I want to be able to see it as a block, you know, rather than straight down a page. So you're going to get yourself 15 words. If you've got some sources in front of you, a dictionary is great, a book of poetry, an article, any piece of text, you're going to pull 15 words at random. One suggestion though, if it's an article, and a lot of the words are similar. You know, if you're pointing to a word, And say you've got an article about vision, and the first word is vision. And then the next one you point to is eye, and the next one is blind, and you realize you're getting all the words that belong together. Then jump past that and get a different one. You want very quickly to get 15 words. And even if it's not in your text, get one specific place. Give yourself a city, a state, a county, some specific place so that you can anchor your free write. Okay. So either decide you're going to use my 15 words or take a couple of minutes right now to get 15 words. Actually, 14 words in a place. You should be close to finish. Otherwise, it means that you're selecting the words instead of grabbing 15 that are right in front of you. Now, when I give these directions, I will talk my 15 words for you so you get the idea. So if the directions don't make sense, the example I think will. You're going to be adding as many extra words as you need to keep your thoughts flowing. Okay, so you don't have to just stick to these 15. You can add as many words as you want. You're going to keep your sentences and phrases flowing and try to use all 15 words. But what's going to happen is you're going to dead end. You're going to be flowing along and all of a sudden you won't know what to say. You'll hear that when I talk this through for you. Then just start with a different word and go again. Don't worry about sentence structure. Don't worry about if the combinations make sense. You can add suffixes or take suffixes off. You can use them as a noun or a verb. I usually check the words off as I use them, but you'll discover that you think you're at the end and you've missed 2. Well, that's fine. Or you've used 1 3 times. Well, that's fine. What you're going to be doing is going through this list 3 times as fast as you can, starting in a different place each time. So here's what it sounds like if I were speaking it instead of writing it. Tears are like butterflies. I wish I had some bread, but it is invisible. A stash of roots is sadder than my conversation. Slender is the grinning Paris model. Explosions are like bells. Rags burst. Now I'm going to start in a different place. A conversation sadder than an invisible butterfly. My tears are a stash, slender, grinning. Why do the bells burst like explosions in Paris? And I missed one the 3rd time. Bursts of bells, explosions of tears, butterflies in a stash of conversation, sadder than invisible slender roots. Give me some bread, give me some rags. So I haven't checked them off yet. Okay, so you can add as many words as you want. I try to do this in 2 minutes or less, but you haven't done it as much as I have, so I'm going to give you a little more time.
Excuse me, do we need to keep the order of the words? Did you
No,
explain
you were
that?
going to,
Okay. Jumble
but
them
that's
up.
why I checked them off. So
Yeah.
when I get done, I'll have 3 checks. So just trust yourself and go as quickly as you can. Here we go. Don't worry if you didn't make it through 3 times. You can always go back to this exercise if it's working for you. Let's hear a few phrases that are interesting that would not have happened if you hadn't done this exercise. Just phrases. You don't have to read the whole thing unless you want to.
Invisible tears are sadder than a cloudburst.
More. Anyone else?
The wind bites like Whitman's poem.
The wind, what?
The wind bites like Whitman's poems.
Very good. Bites. Okay.
He cradled a hummingbird skull.
I know the family, but feel the river.
Thinking that nervous making thought that she could make it in Montreal.
And it gives us a sense of place. I love having a place in them.
The birds are in my yard, feathers flying, talons clinging to suet feeders or perching on platforms before they fly away.
Oh, the suet feeders before they fly away.
Yeah.
That is interesting, especially since our suet feeder flew away last night. A bear took it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Where do you live?
Port Edwards. And we had one bend the feeder, and so we had brought everything in except that one suet feeder we forgot, and cranked that one down. And
Okay. We don't have any bears in Milwaukee. At least I don't think so.
well, we're right on the edge of the village. Anyone else have some phrases?
I've got the newsboy hit the mad ground, caught uncertain in the rolling lawn.
He hit what?
The newsboy hit the mad ground.
The mad ground.
Caught
Okay.
uncertain in the rolling lawn.
Okay, rolling lawn and mad ground.
Tragedy. Oh, go ahead.
I have, I can't see who's talking.
That's the problem with Zoom, but I'm so glad so many of you have things to say.
I have blood clots canceled, all hopes for a journey. Undiscovered treasures left submerged in fjords.
Mm-hmm.
A tragedy of intrigue, concepts in a circle.
Oh, I like the circular.
Tears burst like explosions, sadder than roots pulled from the ground.
The personification of things being sad, I think that's a real interesting idea. So now what? Now what do you do with this? What you might want to do is take some of these sentences or phrases and make them the opening line and then go from there. So it's something completely different than what you started out with. Also, if there are any words that don't work for you, look them up and find a synonym. The one that stopped me every time was stash. It's just not a word that I use. And I looked it up and I could use hide or conceal if I'm using it as a verb, or store or stockpile if I'm using it as a noun. And I thought, okay, a stockpile of roots is much more natural to me than a stash. The same thing with Paris. I've been to Paris, so Paris worked for me. Nice loaves of French bread in Paris, but it might be a word that pulls some of you out of the poem that you'd written, where if you put Milwaukee or some other place, Montreal, it might take you further into the poem. Play with the language, turn nouns into verbs, adjectives into nouns. If you look at what you've done, when we're trying to be descriptive, we have a tendency to add more adjectives, lots and lots and lots of adjectives. And in terms of impact on the reader, verbs have the most impact. Followed by the nouns, if it's a nice specific noun, followed by the adverbs because they modify the verbs, and then come the adjectives on the end. So if you're thinking of walking slowly, instead of sticking that adverb on the end, ambled or waddled or some other stronger word, verb. Same thing. If you have two adjectives, that's the most common pattern that we put in our poems. Big black bug, silly little girl, two adjectives and then a noun. Look at your adjectives, and if one of them is dynamite, it really is vivid, you may want to have just one adjective there, or else strengthen that second adjective so it has as much impact as the first. Also, if any of the words here feel like this is an exercise. I had to use these words, and so, you know, every time I get to them, they don't belong. Get rid of them. Once when I did this with students, I was using a book of poems called Letters from My Alzheimer's Patients. So when I was grabbing words at random, with it being about Alzheimer's patients, one of the words was Alzheimer's and one of the words was pink. So 3 people working on their own ended up with Alzheimer's patients in pink bathrobes. And they were good poems, but they all were going to be submitting to the same journal and the same contests. And I said, all right, make that illness something that you're familiar with from yourself or from your family, so that we don't have all of these pink bathrobes on Alzheimer's patients. So take that list and modify it to make it your own. That's what exercises are for, to be mutated. Remember at the beginning of the workshop when I said I was going to encourage you not to write what you wanted to write about? Well, I'm hoping what is happening is, even though you didn't intend, it is there in the free writes, in the different things that you wrote, because it is there in your mind. This idea that, well, I'd like to write a poem about this. Maybe you're thinking of writing about a loss that affected you. If you look at some of these lines, you may see lines that fit with that express the emotion. And so what we're going to do now is an exercise with emotions. So let's list and write down as many emotions as we can think of. Emotions. Love, hate. Your turn.
Jealousy. Sad, angry, frustrated.
Delight.
Bitterness.
Bitterness.
Contrite. Confused.
Joy, elation, wonder,
elation,
peaceful,
wonder,
contented.
All right, we have a bunch, and I bet some of you are holding yours back so that you don't have to share it. All right, thinking of emotions, now on your page, vertically, write S, 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 T, T, vertically down the page so you have room to write next to it. That's a mnemonic device so you remember your 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Now, I know you could switch those around because there's 3 S's and 2 T's, but if you keep them in that order, it'll help for what we're going to do next: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. What you're going to do is choose one emotion. It doesn't have to be one of the ones on our list. It can be, you know, any emotion. One emotion And as quickly as you can, so you don't think too hard, tell us what it looks like. So if it's love, love looks like, it sounds like, it smells like, it tastes like, it feels like, and some simile, okay? What does it look like, sound like, smell like, taste like, and feel like for one emotion? Go. Do, 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 do. Now, hopefully you're finishing up here, but one thing you can think about with these emotions is that most emotions are not pure. They're a blend. Anger is often a cover for embarrassment. Happiness and sadness can exist together. Like when you're sitting at a wedding and you're getting teary because you're so happy, but you're also sad because your dad's not there to see his granddaughter get married. It's all woven together. In Chinese, the character for catastrophe is the character for crisis with opportunity put next to it. So think of those emotions as being bigger than just one feeling. What we're going to do when we share these, hopefully we've got two people that have the same emotion, because a fun kind of poem to write is a two-voice poem. You can either do it on two sides of the page, one speaking here and one there. And if you really get it together, you can have it read down this way and down this way. And then also if you read it across, or you can write a two-voice poem, just as you normally write a poem, but two different people are speaking. So does someone have an emotion that they're going to read us their senses for? And then we'll see if someone else has the same one.
Frustrated.
Does anyone else have frustrated? Does anyone have something similar?
I have frustrated.
Okay, terrific. Are you volunteering?
I
Because
don't apparently.
well, not if you don't want to. You never have to volunteer if you don't want to. But if you will volunteer, what we're going to do with this two-voice is either make it adversarial. So the first person will say, frustration looks like, and whatever they have. And then the second person will say, no, it looks like, and then the opposite. Or they can be collegial. They can get along. And one says, frustration looks like, and the other one says, and it looks like, and agrees with them. So how do we want to do it? Those of you that are frustrated, are we going to agree or disagree?
Agree.
Agree?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
all right. We've done a negative poem. We'll do a positive. So tell us what frustration is like.
Frustration looks like blurred words.
Frustration looks jumbled.
Frustration sounds like a cacophony of two different songs.
Frustration is noisy.
Frustration smells like death in a flower garden.
Frustration is acrid.
Frustration tastes bitter.
And sour.
Frustration feels like vibrations that are not consistent.
And it's bumpy.
You two should work together. Another emotion.
Yeah. Worked out well.
Very well. What's another emotion someone has that they're willing to share?
I have elation.
Elation? Does someone have elation or something
I
similar?
have that also.
Terrific.
I have elation.
Are you willing to share?
I am happy.
I guess.
Do we have 3?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are we going to agree or disagree? Let's agree. I like the
Agree.
positivity. So what order are we going in? Whoever volunteered first, okay, can start first.
Elation looks like a flight of geese in V formation.
And looks like fireworks.
And an end-to-end smile.
All right, now sound.
Elation sounds like a soft summer rain.
And birds at dawn.
And cackling laughter.
Elation smells like lasagna coming out of the oven.
Lilacs in May.
A bunch of roses.
Elation tastes like chocolate ice cream.
Like fudge.
A slice of cake.
Let's hear sound again, because the rhythms of that line fell together beautifully.
Sound
Elation, yeah, sounds.
sounds like a soft rain on a summer day.
Birds at dawn.
Cackling laughter.
Isn't that beautiful? I don't think I can repeat it exact. Like the soft summer rain. What the birds at dawn, cackling laughter. It just resolved. Beautiful, very beautiful. Do we have another one?
We didn't do touch.
Oh, sorry.
Elation feels like a caress by your lover.
Like silk.
A tight hug.
Silk and a tight hug. The contrast between those two things. As soon as she said silk, it reminded me that I made a quilt once years ago when I had cats, and there were velvet strips and satin strips, and the cat would slide her feet on those satin strips and then go and stop on that velvet. And I thought, this cat really knows how to appreciate the sense of touch. Do we have another emotion?
I did grief.
Did anyone have grief or something similar? Sadness or grief would go together?
Would contrition work?
Let's make it work.
Okay, do you want to start?
I had sadness.
Okay, let's do 3.
Do you want me to start with grief?
Yeah, start in the order that you volunteered.
Okay. Grief looks like a vast expanse of gray mist.
Contrition is pale blue.
Sadness is a gray sky.
Grief is a wail echoing within my soul.
It sounds like steady rain.
Sadness is a bell buoy.
Grief smells like an unlaundered flannel shirt.
It smells like sodden earth.
Sadness smells like the salt of a sea breeze.
Grief tastes like spoonfuls of ice cream out of the container unrestrained.
Contrition tastes bitter.
Sadness tastes bitter.
Grief feels like the stomach ache of memories trapped within.
Contrition feels slippery like mud.
Sadness feels like the slap of waves on ankles.
So many wonderful things happened there. Remember earlier when I said, don't be afraid to repeat something? Was it contrition first or grief that had the same bitter? And even the way you read those lines, it was like, you know, grief is bitter, contrition is bitter. The repetition really strengthened it. There were so many lines that triggered memories that I'm hoping triggered them for you too. The unwashed flannel shirt. I think all of us have done that where you don't wash something because it still smells like the person. We have one of our dog's old toys that was never washed that still has dog spit on it. What other lines stayed with you? Those are important for you writers to know. Which lines have impact?
The stomach ache of memories trapped within. Wow.
I thought all three of the touch ones. I can't remember what they.
Let's hear them again, the touch ones.
Grief feels like the stomach ache of memories trapped within.
Contrition feels like, contrition feels slippery like mud.
Sadness feels like the slap of waves on ankles.
The slap of waves on ankles. There's a beautiful sound of the ocean, but it's also, it's kind of it's definitely a calming, but it's almost a sad sound. Also, it depends on where you are mentally, how the images work. And that's something to think about when you're putting your poems together. I went to a workshop once on a really freezing weekend. I mean, it was bitter. And we were supposed to go outside and write because it was nature writing, but it was way below zero. And so a lot of people sat in the doorway by the fireplace and looked out and wrote about that. Well, I did my assignment and I thought, if the animals survived last night, I can survive. How did they do it? So I followed the deer tracks and they went down into the gully. And the sun was out. And so I was out of the wind, and being out of the wind, I could write for a half hour before my hands got really cold. And I learned from that to, appreciate what nature had to offer. And one of the women who was grieving went right out on the ice, full in the wind. And her writing reflected something that I put in a poem later, that she said, the more physical pain I feel, the less emotional pain I feel. So she had taken the wind right in her face. So what I was seeing in that nature as that coldness as a way to get in touch with my love of nature, she was using it in the opposite way. So now what? Well, what I want you to do is, I gave my email out before, and we'll do this again to make sure everybody's got it. JOHANNES 7 at gmail.com. That's the email we have left over from when we did the Poets Calendar, so I can keep it separate from all the junk I get every day. So here we go again. There's two J's. JOHANNES 7 at gmail.com. And if you all could take a sentence or phrase that you wrote tonight and email that to me. I will try to get them all together into a found poem before our next session. Now, I will also be checking my spam filter a lot because one of the things that you can do, I'm not forcing you to do homework if you don't want to. If you would like, take some of the things that you worked on, either one of the exercises or bits and pieces from all of them, or the best line you got that you now are putting at the top of the page and doing something with, and see if you can come up with a draft in the next 2 weeks that paints pictures with words, reads smoothly, and surprises us with something new about the subject. But notice a draft is what I'm asking you to do. Because if you send me a finished poem, there's nothing I can do. What I'm going to be doing, I'm not critiquing. I'm in critique groups that are designed to look at every word and make sure we get it just right. And I enjoy that. I really do. But I aimed this workshop at emerging writers. And so what I want to do is give you suggestions that maybe it never occurred to you to try. I was working with a student once, and she had a computer file. I don't know where it ended because it went on forever. She had been writing poems all of her teenage life. And when I was helping her with her poems, I realized that there was no method to her line division. So I explained to her what enjambment was, and also how, unless you were doing it for a specific purpose, you should try to say something in your line rather than saying she was going into the woods. Oh, okay. She was going into the woods, unless you're enjamming on purpose. Well, that's all I had to tell her. And she started hitting the return and changing lines faster than I could imagine anyone could do that. And I said, oh, and here's another lesson. And she said, no, I'm having too much fun with this. And just kept going through that whole long file. And the reason her line division was the way it was not because she was stubborn. It was because it never had occurred to her to do some of those things with her line division. So that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to do if you send me a draft. If you send a draft to someone and they say, don't change a word, it can mean several things. It can mean, don't change a word, you are absolutely amazing, because that does happen. It does occasionally happen. But it can also mean that the person is afraid that you won't accept the suggestion and that you'll be angry at them, and so they're just not making any. And it can also mean that they were too busy to take the time to look at it and think of suggestions. I used to do this for a living, and so I'm committing the next couple of weeks to saying, yeah, I'd love to have you try these suggestions. Also, if you look at one of my suggestions and say, nah, not going to work for me, that is a good learning tool because it's a conscious choice. It was not, don't tell me anything. It was, no, you told me something, but I already knew that, and I deliberately chose not to do that in my poem. That's a good way to work on your writing. And I don't call it defensive. I call it confident in certain things that are what you do. So I'll try to come up with some ideas for you. Now, if you've been to any of these other workshops, what we've done before is people send their poems to Tori, and then she picks 20 at random to read the next week. Not the next week, sorry, the next month. But what I'd like to do is to continue with this being a learning experience by those of you that are sending me drafts. Once you either try the suggestions or choose not to try the suggestions, I'll ask some of you that have a lesson that others could really learn from to read your draft and then briefly explain what I suggested and what you chose to do, and then read the result. Now, if we have time for everybody, that will be fantastic. If we don't, I'll ask some of you to do this, and then we will hope and expect that there still will be time left in the hour and a half to hear some of the other ones as well. Does that make sense? Or are there questions about what I'm trying to do here?
Joan, can you restate the fact that it's two different tasks that they're emailing you? One is a phrase for,
Very good.
For a found poem that Joan will compose of all our lines.
Yep.
Two is a draft of a poem, maybe originated tonight, maybe originated later with her worksheet. And then Joan, would you restate what you would like to see in the draft? Paint a picture, surprise.
Okay, here we go. What I'd like to see in the drafts. Concentrate on painting pictures with words. You want it to read smoothly when you read it out loud. You know, practice it. It was happening already when you did your free writes. Something that surprises the reader. And how is that going to happen? It's going to surprise you. That some phrase that you never thought was going to go into it is going to go into it, and it's going to surprise you. And from what I've seen tonight, I'm expecting that fun things will happen. So you could also, if you get going on this and send it to me soon and I send it back, we can just keep sending it back. When I was teaching, sometimes I would have 2 writing classes, and I would, when I was lucky, get them scheduled in the morning so I could use my prep hours for the students who said, I want to take this home tonight and work on it. So I could get theirs done so that they could have it back in their hands to leave. And so I will be playing teacher again for the next few weeks and going to my email and doing those right away. So if you don't hear from me, it means that I haven't found you in the spam filter, or don't be afraid to check back and say, are you getting my emails? Because I don't want to lose anybody. And also you definitely can choose not to do this if you don't want to. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you're writing and seeing how it can change. I don't know about you, how long you've been writing, but everything I write goes through revision and revision and revision. And then I put it away for a while and I look at it again and I go, oh, we need to get rid of this line. We need to change this, or I choose to change this. So we've got a couple of minutes here. Do you understand what you're doing? You're sending me, hopefully, by the time I log out, I'll be getting those phrases or lines that I will be making the found poem out of. And then sometime in the next 2 weeks, you'll be sending me a draft if you like. Questions, comments, something you didn't get a chance to read that you wanted to read. You are a wonderful group.
Do you want to give them deadlines for the
2 weeks for the first draft coming in, because that way I can say to some people, plan on reading this, at the next session.
Okay.
And I have no idea how many I'm going to get, so we may be able to hear them all. That would be fun.
So 2 weeks for the draft, and maybe by Monday for the line for the found poem.
Oh, I was hoping that would be happening right now, because they've got it right here. I don't want them to think too hard about it. I want them to just choose one.
Okay.
But I will wait till Monday to do something with it, since Easter weekend is upon us, right?
Okay. Or we can say by end of day tomorrow.
That would be good. In case I decide to get to work.
And this is all voluntary. If you don't,
yes, all voluntary.
If you don't want to do either of these things, you don't have to. But if you do, Joan will compose a group found poem for us, and she will get into a communication with you about your poem. And I will follow up by email with all this too. So you'll have an update.
Anything else anyone wants to add?
I'd like to add a thank you for this wonderful workshop.
Well, thank you to all of you. You are exciting to work with.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
That was great, Joan.
Thanks.
Yeah. Could I ask something
Thank you.
about the
Very inspiring.
William Carlos Williams poem?
Yeah.
It seemed like there weren't as many lines as your example of the back and forth, negative in response, but maybe I missed how that translated.
Yeah, I copied it from it. Maybe it's because I put two lines together. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, the two at the end, the two actions are together, and cut them and put them in my hand. I will look back at the original and see if I messed up.
Would you
What
mind?
is the name of the poem again?
The Act, ACT.
Do you have it there? Would you mind reading it once
Yeah.
more?
Okay, if you've got the empty sheet, then I can read it slowly and you can count the lines and see if I messed up. There were the roses in the rain. Don't cut them, I pleaded. They won't last, she said. But they're so beautiful where they are. Ugh, we were all beautiful once, she said, and cut them and gave them to me in my hand. Did I put an extra one? Uh-oh, where is the extra?
It seemed like there's a whole couplet of but and a negative response.
Okay.
That is extra.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying, I mean.
No,
it
that's
worked
all right. No, I'm
it-
glad you
yeah.
did that, because when I do it again, I will not do that to people. Although your results were so good, maybe I should
Yeah.
do that to people. But thanks for pointing that out.
You're welcome. I wasn't trying to be critical. I was just
No,
trying to.
I don't see it as criticism at all.
It seemed like the more buts and more responses we got to good lines.
I think you did. Yes, I think definitely. For one thing, it becomes like an argument then. And oftentimes when people argue, they stop thinking and just try to win their point without, what really matters. Should we say goodnight?
Joan, I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to-
Joan.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Thank
thank you because I realized as I was doing these exercises and you kept telling us not to think too much, I realized that that's my biggest problem, is that I
think too much.
I want to come out with the final draft first.
That thinking is, I hate as an educator to say, don't think. But it was interesting to me. I play Native American style flute, and I was at a workshop where someone was talking about the impact of music on our bodies, which parts help people heal, if they have a stomach ache and whatever. And I was rather cynical about the whole thing, but then when she would play certain music keys, and I think, boy, I feel that right in my heart. And everyone had the same feeling about the key of E, that it reached their heart. And the key of F sharp is what they use with an infant that's had surgery. Because if you've ever had surgery, you may remember when they're going, wake up, you need to wake up, because they want you to wake up so your lungs don't fill up. But you can't do that with an infant because they don't understand, and they play F sharp because it stimulates the brain. And I realized that when I am playing my Native American flute music, if I am playing in the key of E, I can hit a lot of bad notes and still be happy as a hamster in a wheel. But in the key of F sharp, all I do is go, ooh, that note's out of tune. Ooh, I don't like that. Oh, and judge. And the
Mhm.
faster you write, you can't do that. You don't have a chance to do that. Well,
Well,
let's
thank you.
hope
That's-
something wonderful comes out of this week.
I'll take that lesson with me. Thank you.
I hope so.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
I'm leaving. Good
Have a
night.
good night. Have a good night,
Night.
everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.